Deep in the darkness of a French cave, torchlight flickers across walls that have been waiting 30,000 years for visitors. These are not just marks on stone, but messages from the first humans who thought like us, who dreamed like us. What if these ancient artists were trying to tell us something urgent about what it means to be human? The hands that painted these walls turned to dust millennia before the pyramids were even imagined by our ancestors. Yet their art remains, frozen in stone and shadow, speaking across an abyss of time we can barely comprehend. Who were these first artists? And why did they descend into the earth's darkness to create beauty no one might ever see? Have you ever wondered what drove humans to make art before they had agriculture, cities, or even written language? The story begins in the depths of the last ice age, when glaciers 2 miles thick crushed northern Europe beneath their weight. The world was colder then, wrapped in ice and wind, a landscape where mammoths walked and cave lions hunted in the snow. Small bands of humans moved across this frozen world, following herds of reindeer and bison through valleys carved by ancient ice. They lived lives of constant motion and danger, where every dawn might bring death from cold, hunger, or massive predators. But something extraordinary was happening in their minds, something that separated them from every creature that had come before. These Ice Age humans carried fire into the deepest caves, places where sunlight had never touched the stone. They brought pigments ground from ochre and manganese, mixed with animal fat and their own saliva to make paint. In the flickering light of burning animal fat, they began to transform bare rock into galleries of prehistoric life. The caves they chose were not their homes but sacred spaces, chambers deep underground where the earth itself seemed alive. Water dripped from stalactites in the darkness, creating music that echoed through chambers no human ear had heard before. The artists worked in spaces so tight they had to lie on their backs, painting by torchlight in air thick with smoke. What compulsion drove them to crawl through narrow passages, risking death in darkness, just to leave these marks on stone? The answer might lie in what they chose to paint, images that reveal the world through Ice Age eyes. Horses gallop across cave walls in herds, their manes flowing with a movement so real you can almost hear hoofbeats. Bison stand massive and powerful, painted with such detail that individual hairs are visible after 30,000 years. Cave lions stalk through stone, their muscles tense with predatory grace that the artists knew from terrifying personal experience. These were not just animals to the Ice Age humans, but beings of power, mystery, and profound spiritual significance. The painters knew these creatures intimately, had watched them breathe, run, die, studying every movement for their own survival. In the cave called Chauvet, artists painted a pride of lions hunting together, a scene of coordinated violence frozen in time. The lion's eyes seemed to follow you through the darkness, alive with an intelligence the artists recognized and feared. But the paintings show more than fear. They reveal a deep respect, even love, for the natural world that sustained them. Horses overlap horses in deliberate composition, creating the illusion of movement, of herds thundering across prehistoric plains. The artists understood perspective and shading, techniques we thought were invented thousands of years later by civilizations we call advanced. They used the natural contours of cave walls to give dimension to their work, turning bumps into bellies and cracks into legs. Some images were painted over centuries, with different artists adding layers, creating collaborations across generations of human time. Can you imagine adding your own mark to a painting your great-grandmother started, continuing a conversation across lifetimes? Not all the marks are animals. Human hands appear everywhere, stenciled in negative space by blowing pigment through hollow bones. Hundreds of hands reach out from cave walls, each one unique, each one saying simply and powerfully, "I was here." These handprints are mostly left hands, suggesting the artists held their pigment tubes in their dominant right hands while working. Men's hands, women's hands, children's hands, all pressed against stone in a ritual we can only guess at understanding. Some hands are missing fingers, whether from frostbite, ritual amputation, or a symbolic gesture lost 2 times vast silence. The children's handprints are the most haunting. Tiny palms pressed against rock by parents 30,000 years dead. What parent held their child up to the cave wall, helping them leave their mark for eternity they couldn't comprehend? In some caves, the hand stencils cluster around natural features, cracks and bulges that might have held spiritual meaning. The placement was never random but deliberate, chosen with the same care we might place flowers on a grave. Deeper in the caves, where darkness becomes absolute, strange symbols appear that no modern mind can decode with certainty. Dots, lines, grids, and geometric patterns that might be the first attempts at writing or maps, or something beyond our understanding. These abstract symbols appear across Europe, from Spain to Russia, suggesting a shared symbolic language among Ice Age peoples. What if these marks are the earliest human attempts to record something beyond the physical world? Ideas about time, spirit, cosmos. In the cave of Lascaux, a man lies beneath a wounded bison, the earliest known narrative scene in all human art. The bison's intestines spill out while the human figure, drawn simply with a bird-like head, appears to be falling or dying. This scene has haunted archaeologists for decades. A story frozen in stone whose meaning died with its creator. Was this a hunting tragedy, a shamanic vision, a myth about death and transformation we can no longer understand? The artists also painted creatures that never existed, chimeras with human bodies and animal heads, beings from dreams or visions. A figure known as the sorcerer dances on the cave wall, human and animal combined. Perhaps the first image of spiritual transformation. These hybrid beings suggest the Ice Age humans saw no rigid boundary between human and animal, physical and spiritual worlds. The paintings were not just art but technology, ways of storing and transmitting knowledge across generations without written words. Young hunters might have learned animal behavior from these images, studying prey and predator in the safety of firelit caves. The acoustic properties of painted chambers are remarkable. Many images appear where echoes are strongest, where sound becomes magical. Did Ice Age humans sing or chant before these paintings? Using sound and image together in rituals, we'll never fully know. What sacred stories were told in these chambers while shadows danced on painted walls, and voices echoed through stone? Carbon dating reveals some caves were used for 20,000 years. Longer than all recorded human history combined. Generation after generation returned to these same sacred spaces, adding their own images to an ever-growing gallery of time. The persistence suggests these places were not just important, but essential to Ice Age human identity and survival. Not just places of art, but cathedrals of stone where humanity first explored what it meant to be conscious, creative beings. The cave of Altamira holds paintings so sophisticated that when discovered, scientists refuse to believe prehistoric humans made them. The bison on Altamira's ceiling are painted with such mastery that Picasso himself said, "We have learned nothing in 12,000 years." These artists were not primitive but fully modern humans with minds as complex and creative as our own. They felt the same urge to create beauty, to leave something permanent. That drives artists in every age including ours. The pigments they used were carefully chosen and prepared. Some transported hundreds of miles from their sources. Red ochre for life and blood, manganese black for shadow and death, yellow for the sun they rarely saw in winter. They mixed these minerals with animal fat, creating paints that would survive longer than any civilization we've built. Some paintings show animals that are now extinct. Mammoths and woolly rhinos we know only from these ancient portraits. The artists were witnesses to a world that vanished when the ice melted, leaving only their testimony in stone. As the climate warmed and the ice retreated north, the age of cave painting came to its mysterious end. The last paintings were made around 10,000 years ago, as humans began to farm and build permanent settlements. Did agriculture and civilization somehow diminish the need for these sacred underground galleries of prehistoric memory? Or did the spiritual world the paintings represented transform into something new, expressed in different ways we recognize today? Today, most painted caves are closed to visitors, our breath and warmth threatening to destroy what time could not. The carbon dioxide we exhale feeds bacteria that eat away at pigments that survived 300 centuries of darkness. Scientists study the caves with laser scanners and special lights, revealing details invisible to the Ice Age artists themselves. Hidden images emerge under different wavelengths, paintings beneath paintings, stories layered upon stories through millennia of human expression. We've discovered that some cave artists were women, their handprints identifiable by the ratio of finger lengths. This challenges old assumptions about prehistoric life, suggesting women were not just gatherers, but artists, storytellers, keepers of sacred knowledge. The youngest hand stencils belong to infants, their tiny palms held against stone by parents expressing something beyond words. Perhaps the urge to say I existed, my child existed, we were here together, is the deepest human need of all. In Indonesia, cave art just as old as Europe's reveals that humans on opposite sides of the world shared this creative impulse. The need to make art appears to be universal, encoded in our species, as essential as language or the use of fire. These paintings are not just historical artifacts, but mirrors reflecting the birth of human consciousness and symbolic thought. Before these caves, no creature had ever created art, had ever made something purely to express meaning beyond survival. The moment humans began to paint, we became something new in the universe, beings capable of imagination made manifest. Do you feel the weight of that legacy when you create, knowing you're part of a chain stretching back 30,000 years? Every sketch, every photograph, every story we tell connects us to those first artists, painting by torchlight in the darkness. The cave painters couldn't know we would find their work, couldn't imagine us standing where they stood, moved by their vision. Yet they painted anyway, driven by the same mysterious need that makes us document our own fleeting lives. Their art reminds us that being human means more than mere survival. It means creating meaning from the raw material of existence. The handprints on cave walls are conversations across impossible spans of time. Ancient humans reaching out to touch the future. We are that future they couldn't imagine, and we carry their creative fire forward into times they could never dream. The painted caves stand as humanity's first cathedrals, where our ancestors discovered that art could make them immortal. 30,000 years have passed since those first artists entered the darkness with fire and pigment and vision. Empires have risen and fallen to dust. Languages have been born and forgotten. Yet these paintings endure in the darkness. They wait in silence beneath the earth. These messages from the dawn of human consciousness, reminding us who we are. In the end, the mystery of cave art is the mystery of ourselves. Why we alone among Earth's creatures must create to truly live.